Most people look at a guy like Lucky Luciano or Al Capone and they see a gangster. They see the Tommy guns, the fedoras, and the headlines. But if you look closer, really look at the mechanics, you aren't looking at a street hood anymore. You're looking at a CEO. Did you know that at its peak, the American Mafia was arguably more efficient than General Motors? They weren't just shaking people down. They were managing global supply chains, diversifying assets, and solving the one problem every business owner faces. How do you keep people loyal when the stakes are life and death? Today, we're opening the files on Underworld Economics. I am going to show you exactly how the mob stopped being a neighborhood gang and turned into a corporate machine that lasted 100 years. Grab a seat. This is the strategy they don't teach you in business school. The board of directors, centralizing power before 1931. The mafia in America was a mess. It was just a bunch of mustache-Pete's old school guys who only wanted to fight over territory. It was bad for business. High turnover, constant war, zero growth. Then came Charlie Lucky Luciano. Luciano realized something that most modern startups fail to understand. Competition is expensive. Cooperation is profitable. He did the unthinkable. He got the heads of the most powerful families in one room and created the commission. In corporate terms, this was the board of directors. He didn't want to be the king, he wanted to be the chairman. The lesson for the underworld, they created a supreme court for crime. If two guys had a dispute over a trucking route or a gambling ring, they didn't shoot it out. They went to the board. Think about your own life. How much energy do you waste fighting wars that don't add a dime to your pocket? Luciano taught the underworld that the smartest move is to build a system where everyone gets a piece of the pie, so nobody feels like burning the bakery down. Vertical integration. Owning the supply chain now. Let's talk about the money. Most small-time crooks are middlemen. They buy low, sell high, and hope they don't get caught. The corporate mob, they practiced vertical integration. Take the garment district or the construction industry in New York during the 70s. The mafia didn't just rob construction sites. That's amateur hour. Instead, they owned the concrete companies. Then, they controlled the unions that provided the labor. Then, they had the trucking companies that moved the materials. If you wanted to build a skyscraper in Manhattan, you had to buy their concrete, delivered by their trucks, worked on by their union members. The strategy, they turned crime into a service. They made themselves a necessary part of the legitimate economy. Imagine you're running a business. Are you just a middleman, or do you own the process? The mob knew that if you own the bottleneck, you own the industry. They stopped being outlaws and became partners. Unwanted partners, sure, but essential ones. The cost of loyalty, managing human capital. Let's get real for a second. We've all felt that stress at work, the fear of being replaced, the backstabbing in the office. In the mafia, human resources involves a cold basement and a .38 caliber, but here's the irony. The mob turned loyalty into a currency better than any for a 1K or dental plan. They used a rank and file system. Associates, soldiers, capos, underboss, boss. It was a clear ladder. Everyone knew how to get a promotion. The psychological hack. They created a brand identity. When a guy became a made man, he wasn't just an employee anymore. He was part of the family. In business strategy, we call this corporate culture. The mob understood that people don't work for money alone, they work for status. They work for the feeling of being untouchable. They built a culture so strong that even though the retirement plan was usually prison or the graveyard, men were lining up to join. Ask yourself, are you building a team that's just there for the paycheck? Or are you building a culture where people feel like they belong to something bigger? Risk management, the art of the shell. You can't run $1 billion empire out of your pocket. The biggest hurdle for these bosses wasn't the police, it was the IRS. This is where the corporate transition really happened. They became masters of Underworld Economics. They bought laundromats, pizza parlors, and vending machine routes. Why? Because these are cash-heavy businesses. It's the perfect veil, but they went further. They used front men, guys with clean records, lawyers, accountants, legitimate businessmen who held the titles to the property. The takeaway: the smartest mafia bosses lived like ghosts, while the flashy guys like Gotti were wearing $5,000 suits and talking to the press. The real corporate bosses like Tony Accardo or Carlo Gambino were sitting in modest houses, blending into the suburbs. They understood that real power is invisible. In our world, we're taught to flex, to show off the win. But in the strategy of the underworld, the moment you show your hand, the game is over. True bosses diversify their risk and keep their name off the paperwork. The summary and call to action. So, what's the lesson here? The mafia bosses who lasted, the ones who turned crime into corporate empires, didn't do it through violence alone. They did it through structure, cooperation, and long-term scaling. They stopped thinking like hoods and started thinking like chairmen. They centralized power with the commission. They integrated their supply chains. They built a culture of made men, and they mastered the art of hiding in plain sight. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and start a racket. I'm telling you that the principles of power are universal. Whether you're building a YouTube channel, a startup, or a career, you need to think about your commission. Who are your partners? What's your supply chain? Is your culture built on loyalty or just a paycheck? Try this tonight. Look at one war you're fighting in your life right now. Ask yourself if it's profitable, or if you should be looking for a Luciano move to cooperate and scale instead. If you want to go deeper into the files of Underworld strategy, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button for Mafia Power Files. We've got new files dropping every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Stay sharp, stay powerful. I'll see you in the next one.